I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. Last Thanksgiving, my daughter told me my cooking wasn't sophisticated enough for her dinner party, so I hosted my own. She had no idea what I was about to do next would change everything. That morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table folding the third hand-knitted sweater I'd been working on for weeks. My fingers moved automatically, because when you've been a mother for decades, your hands learn how to keep loving even when your heart is tired. The sweater was for Emma, my 10-year-old granddaughter. In Kelly green, her favorite color, soft wool that didn't itch. I'd even stitched tiny little turkeys around the collar because Emma loved the Thanksgiving parade and she never missed it on TV. 73 hours. That's how long I'd spent so far. 73 hours of counting stitches, fixing mistakes, starting over when one row didn't look perfect. Because that's what grandmothers do. We pour love into things people don't even notice until they're gone. I was smoothing the sleeves when my phone rang. I didn't rush to answer. I smiled, actually, because the caller ID said Nicole, my daughter. My only child. I tucked the phone between my shoulder and ear and kept folding. Nancy speaking. There was a pause. Then Nicole's voice came through, and it had that edge to it. That tone that meant she was about to say something I wouldn't like. Mom, Liam and I need to talk to you about Thanksgiving. My hands froze on the soft wool. Outside the kitchen window, my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, was hanging an autumn wreath on her door. Everything looked normal, peaceful, safe. I swallowed. Of course, honey. What time should I come over? I was thinking I could bring the turkey early so I can get it in your oven by... She cut me off. We've decided to do something different this year. I slowly set the sweater down and gave the call my full attention. Different. She cleared her throat like she was rehearsing a speech. We're doing an adults-only Thanksgiving this year, you know? Wine pairing, sophisticated dishes, formal, curated. Curated. Like Thanksgiving was an art exhibit and not a family meal. I forced a laugh that didn't sound like me. Adults only, Nicole. I am an adult. Another pause. Then she laughed. That light, dismissive laugh, like I'd said something cute and silly, not true. You know what I mean, Mom. My throat tightened. What do you mean by everyone? Her words started coming faster now, like she wanted to get it over with. It's going to be very formal. Liam has important clients coming. Richard Hastings from Hastings Capital, and we need to make the right impression. There it was. A name I didn't know. A man I'd never met. Suddenly more important than me. But I'm your mother, I said quietly. And Nicole answered, so casually, so confidently. It felt like someone shutting a door in my face. Exactly. Which is why I knew you'd understand. I stared at the half-finished sweater on the table. 73 hours. Tiny embroidered turkeys. Love sewn into every stitch. Nicole, I tried again. I've already started preparing. I've been working on the kids' sweaters since August. I have your grandmother's pie recipe ready. I'm almost done with the photo album. The photo album? She repeated, distracted. Yes, I said, my voice soft now. 42 Thanksgivings, one photo for every year of your life. I labeled them all. In my mind, I could see them like pages turning. Nicole at 5, chocolate all over her face from sneaking pie. Nicole at 12, proud because she helped roll pie crust. Nicole at 16, making stuffing alone for the first time. Nicole at 23, bringing Liam home and whispering, "Be nice, Mom, he's important." Nicole didn't respond for a moment. Then she sighed, and her voice changed, softened, but not in a loving way, in a pitying way. That's actually another thing. My stomach sank. Mom, your home cooking is wonderful, for what it is. But we hired a professional caterer from New York, someone who actually studied. We need everything to be more sophisticated. Sophisticated. That word hit me like a slap. Not sophisticated enough. Not refined enough. Not good enough. I sat down slowly at my kitchen table, The same table where Nicole had done homework, where I taught her how to knead bread, where we decorated cookies every holiday season for 20 years. My hands trembled. What about the kids? I asked. Can I at least see Emma and Jake? Oh, they'll be there, she said. It's Thanksgiving, but it's a late dinner, 8 courses, adult conversation. You'd be bored, Mom. You'd be bored. Translation, you don't belong. My mouth went dry. I wanted to beg. I wanted to scream. But instead, I heard myself say the most heartbreaking thing a mother can say when she's trying not to fall apart. I understand. Nicole sounded relieved. I knew you would. You're always so reasonable. Then, like my feelings were a small inconvenience. Listen, I have to run. Liam and I have a tasting with the caterer in 20 minutes. Love you. And she hung up. I sat there holding the phone, staring at Emma's sweater. And that was when the doorbell rang. I blinked, wiped my eyes fast, and stood up. Because when you're a mother, even when your heart breaks, you still answer the door. And I had no idea who was standing on my porch, or how that knock was about to change my entire life. It landed exactly where Nicole's words had already bruised me. So what are you going to do? He asked gently. I stared at the sweater, at the apples, at the kitchen that had seen decades of love. I don't know yet, I admitted, but I'm not going to let all this preparation go to waste. David raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? The idea had been forming quietly since the phone call. Small at first, almost silly. Then it grew. What if I don't need her sophisticated dinner party? I said slowly. What if I make my own Thanksgiving? David smiled. Not the polite kind, but the kind that reaches the eyes. I liked the sound of that. The next morning, I woke up with a strange energy in my chest. Purpose. I drove to Portland Community College and taped a handwritten notice on the bulletin board outside the cafeteria. Thanksgiving dinner. For students who can't go home, traditional home-cooked meal, free limited spaces. Contact Nancy. My handwriting was neat. Teacher handwriting. Then I called Safe Harbor House, the women's shelter where I volunteered every Tuesday. Nancy, are you sure? Maria asked gently. That's a big undertaking. I'm sure, I said, and for the first time in days I meant it. I knocked on doors in my neighborhood. Mrs. Rodriguez next door, whose children lived in Spain and couldn't afford to travel. A young couple 3 houses down, Mia and Tom, with a newborn and no family nearby. Just a simple Thanksgiving, I told them. Nothing fancy. By Wednesday evening, I had 15 confirmed guests. 15 people who wanted to be there. David helped me set up tables in my backyard. We borrowed folding chairs from St. Mary's Episcopal Church. I pulled out every tablecloth, every dish, every piece of silverware I owned. And then I cooked. I cooked like my heart depended on it. My mother's turkey recipe. 2 days of brining with apple cider and herbs. Stuffing with sage from my garden. Sweet potato casserole with marshmallows. Green bean casserole. Cranberry sauce from scratch. And pies. Apple, pumpkin, pecan. All the care I'd been saving for a dinner I wasn't invited to. That night, as I rolled out pie dough, my phone buzzed. A text from Nicole. Mom, can you do me a huge favor? Can you lend me $30,000? It's for an investment. Time sensitive, will pay you back next month. Promise. I stared at the screen. $30,000. Nearly a third of my retirement savings. My hands were still dusted with flour. I didn't reply. Instead, I went back to rolling the dough, because something inside me had shifted, and I was about to find out just how much that favor would cost. Thanksgiving morning arrived crisp and clear, the kind of cold that makes the air feel honest. I woke up at 5 a.m., the same way I had for more than 40 years. Old habits don't disappear just because your heart is bruised. I tied my robe tighter, padded into the kitchen, and turned on the oven. The turkey went in first, heavy and perfect, seasoned the way my mother taught me: salt, patience, and time. I set the rolls to rise and put on the coffee. For a moment I stood there listening to the quiet hum of my house. No chaos, no judgment, no one telling me I wasn't enough. I got dressed slowly, carefully. The navy blue dress I'd bought for Nicole's dinner party. The one from Nordstrom I'd saved for months to afford. Pearls around my neck, the last gift Robert ever gave me. I looked at myself in the mirror. 68 years old. Gray hair styled softly, laugh lines around my eyes. I looked like someone's grandmother. And for the first time in weeks, that felt like a compliment. At 1:30 p.m., the doorbell rang. I took a breath and opened the door. 3 young people stood on my porch, each holding something small and wrapped. "Is this real?" the girl in the middle asked. "Like actual Thanksgiving?" She had dark eyes and a nervous smile. "I'm Priya." "I'm Hassan," said the young man beside her, his accent soft but clear. "And I'm Chen," the third said quietly. "Yes," I smiled. "It's real. Come in." They stepped inside like they were afraid it might vanish if they moved too fast. Hassan handed me a small box. I did not know what to bring. "This is baklava, my mother's recipe. I know it is not traditional." "It's perfect," I said, and I meant it. At 2:00, Jessica arrived from Safe Harbor House, holding the hands of 2 small children. 5-year-old Chloe stared at the table through the doorway, her eyes wide. "Are all these for us?" "Every single one," I said, kneeling down. "Do you like marshmallows?" She nodded so hard her ponytail bounced. "Then you're going to love the sweet potatoes." Mrs. Rodriguez arrived next, clutching a bottle of wine and wiping tears from her eyes. "Nancy," she whispered, "I haven't had Thanksgiving with people in 5 years." Then David returned, changed into a suit jacket holding yellow roses. "My favorites," I said without thinking, then froze. He smiled. "Lucky guess." Mia and Tom came last, exhausted but smiling, baby Lily bundled against Tom's chest. "We're sorry," Mia said immediately. "If she cries, she's a baby," I said firmly. Babies are always welcome at my table. By 2:30, every chair was filled. Strangers, neighbors, students, children. People who wanted to be there. I stood at the head of the table, my hands trembling just slightly. "I want to thank you all for coming," I said. "Thanksgiving is about gratitude. And this year I learned something important." They looked at me, attentive, kind. Sometimes the family we choose is just as precious as the family we're born into. David caught my eye and nodded. "Now," I smiled, "let's eat." The room came alive. Laughter, clinking glasses, stories rising and falling like music. Hassan talked about Thanksgivings in Damascus before the war. how his mother spent 3 days cooking even though Thanksgiving wasn't a Syrian holiday. She said any excuse to gather family was worth celebrating, he said, and his voice broke. Priya reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Chen admitted she didn't even know what Thanksgiving was until she came to America. But now I understand. It's about belonging. Marcus, another student, started crying when he tasted the turkey. My grandmother used to make it like this, he said. She passed away last year. Chloe counted marshmallows out loud. 1, 2, 3. Jessica watched her children laugh and whispered to me in the kitchen. My ex-husband used to say I was a bad mother, that I couldn't take care of my kids. She looked through the doorway at Chloe and Ethan playing safely. But look at them. They're happy. We're safe. I'm a good mom. Yes, I said, hugging her. You are. I was cutting pie when my phone rang. Nicole. I almost didn't answer, but hope is a stubborn thing. Mom. Her voice was strained, panicked. Where are you? I've been calling. I'm at home, I said calmly. Having Thanksgiving dinner. What? But I thought, listen, I need you to come here right now. I frowned. I thought you had a caterer. Her voice dropped. The food is inedible. Pretentious garbage. Richard Hastings is here. Liam is furious. Please, can you bring the turkey? Anything. I looked at my dining room, at people laughing, at children safe and fed, at a table full of gratitude. I can't, I said. What do you mean you can't? I'm hosting dinner with people who wanted me here. Silence. Then anger. Mom, don't be difficult. Liam's career depends on this. I took a breath, and for the first time in my life, I didn't explain myself. I'm sorry, I said. I have dessert to serve. And I hung up. My hands were shaking. David stepped beside me and rested a steady hand on my shoulder. You okay? I exhaled. Yes, I said slowly. I think I finally am. But my phone buzzed again, and the next message would reveal exactly why they'd really wanted me all along. Dessert should have been the end of it. Worm pie, whipped cream mustaches, that soft, full feeling that settles in your chest when a meal is shared with people who are truly present. And for a few minutes it was. Chloe fell asleep on Mrs. Rodriguez's lap, her tiny fingers still clutching a napkin. Marcus and Priya were deep in conversation about graduate school applications. Hassan was teaching Chen how to fold paper cranes at the corner of the table, explaining that in his country, 1,000 cranes were said to bring good luck. I watched them and thought, this is it. This is Thanksgiving. Not polished, not sophisticated, but real. Then my phone buzzed again, and again, and again. I didn't look at it at first. I didn't want anything pulling me out of that room. But when I finally checked, my stomach dropped. 3 missed calls from Nicole. 7 text messages. The last one read, Nicole, this is unbelievable. Nicole, you're embarrassing me. Nicole, fine, we'll handle it ourselves. I slipped the phone into my pocket and went back to the kitchen, where Jessica was helping me pack leftovers into containers. For you and the kids, I said, handing her one. Breakfast tomorrow. Her eyes filled with tears. No one's ever done this for us. You're welcome at my table anytime, I replied. People started leaving slowly, hugging me, real hugs, the kind that linger, the kind that say you matter. Hassan was the last of the students to go. Before he left, he pressed something into my hand, a paper crane, perfectly folded. For you, he said softly. Because you gave me a home today, even if just for a few hours. After everyone left, the house felt quiet but not empty. David stayed to help clean up. We worked side by side, rinsing dishes, stacking plates. You know, he said gently, what you did today was extraordinary. I just made dinner, I said. No, he corrected. You created family. His words settled into me slowly, like truth does when you're finally ready for it. When he left, I sat alone at my kitchen table. Empty plates, folded napkins, leftover food neatly packed. And then my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Nicole. It was an unknown number. Unknown. Nancy, we need to talk about your will. And the college fund we discussed for the kids. I stared at the screen. My chest tightened. There it is. Not how are you. Not I'm sorry. Not we hurt you. Money. Always money. I scrolled up. Another message came through. This one from Liam. Liam, we really need to talk. This is family business. Family business. As if love were a transaction. As if motherhood came with an invoice. I didn't reply. Instead, I put my phone face down on the table and stared at Emma's half-finished sweater, lying beside the photo album. 73 hours, 42 Thanksgivings, decades of showing up. And suddenly everything made terrible sense. They hadn't wanted me at Thanksgiving. They'd wanted access. Access to my kitchen when theirs failed. Access to my savings when theirs ran dry. Access to the quiet, dependable woman they assumed would always say yes. The reasonable mother. The backup plan. The bank. A small voice interrupted my thoughts. Grandma? I looked up. Chloe was standing in the doorway, rubbing her eyes, holding her empty plate. Can I have more pie? She asked shyly. Of course, sweetheart, I said, standing up. Which one? She thought carefully. Apple, it tastes like home. I cut her another slice and slid it onto her plate. As she walked back to the living room, something inside me hardened, not into bitterness, but into clarity. That night, after the last light was turned off and the house finally went quiet, I pulled out a notebook. The same kind I used to use for lesson plans when I was teaching. I wrote carefully, deliberately. To do. Call estate attorney. Review will. Remove Nicole as beneficiary. Set up trust for Emma and Jake. Close joint accounts. Protect retirement savings. I stared at the list. My hands shook. I added one more line. Stop waiting for Nicole to see my worth. Start living for myself. The next morning, I picked up the phone and called Rebecca Chen's law office. I need to update my estate documents, I said. There was a pause. Of course, Mrs. Fletcher, the receptionist replied. We have an opening tomorrow at 10. That works, I said. And when I hung up, I knew something irreversible had begun, because love without respect is not love. And I was finally done paying for it. Rebecca Chen's office was in a converted Victorian house downtown. White trim, tall windows, the kind of place that felt professional without being cold. I sat in the waiting room clutching my purse like it might float away if I let go. I'd never needed a lawyer before. Not for myself. When Rebecca came out to greet me, she smiled warmly and shook my hand with confidence. Nancy Fletcher, she said. Please come in. Her office walls were lined with family photos. 2 teenagers, a husband, and an elderly woman I assumed was her mother. That should have comforted me. Instead, it made my chest ache. So, she said gently once we were seated, tell me what's going on. I told her everything. About Thanksgiving, about being uninvited because I wasn't sophisticated enough, about the $30,000 text, about the joint account Nicole had access to, about the message asking to talk about my will. I expected sympathy. What I didn't expect was the seriousness that settled over Rebecca's face as she took notes. When I finished, she set her pen down carefully. Nancy, she said, I need to ask you some difficult questions. I nodded. Has your daughter or her husband ever pressured you to give them money? Yes, I admitted, repeatedly. Have they ever made you feel guilty for saying no? I laughed bitterly. That's their main strategy. Have they ever isolated you from family events or used access to your grandchildren as leverage? My breath caught. Yes. Rebecca leaned back slightly. What you're describing has a name. I waited. Financial exploitation. The word hit me like a slap. I'm not confused, I said quickly. I'm not senile. I manage my own finances. I know, she said calmly. This isn't about your intelligence. Financial exploitation often happens to capable, loving parents, especially mothers, because emotional bonds make them vulnerable. vulnerable target. I felt suddenly cold. Rebecca continued. The pressure, the urgency, the guilt, the talk of family and future. These are classic signs. I stared at my hands. I thought I was just being a bad mother for finally saying no. No, she said firmly. You were protecting yourself. She turned her computer screen toward me. Let's talk specifics. She explained the joint account first. Legally, Nicole has access, she said. But that doesn't make it ethical. If she's taken money without your consent, that's a serious red flag. I swallowed. I haven't checked the account yet. Let's do that now. My fingers trembled as I opened my banking app. And there it was. A withdrawal from 3 days before Thanksgiving. 5,000. No note. No explanation. No conversation. Just gone. My vision blurred. She didn't ask, I whispered. Rebecca's expression darkened. Nancy, that is not okay. I felt stupid, naive, ashamed. How long has this been happening? She asked gently. I don't know, I said. I trusted her. Rebecca nodded. Most parents do. She took a breath. Here's what I recommend. She listed them calmly, clearly. Close all joint accounts immediately. Remove Nicole as executor and beneficiary. Set up a trust for your grandchildren that she cannot access. Add a protection clause requiring a 72-hour waiting period before any financial changes. Document everything. Document? I repeated. Yes, texts, calls, withdrawals. Because if this escalates, and often it does, you'll need a paper trail. I sat there stunned. My daughter wouldn't hurt me, I said weakly. Rebecca softened. Intent doesn't erase impact. People can love you and still harm you. I signed the paperwork with a steady hand I didn't feel. When I left her office 2 hours later, I had a new will, closed accounts, and a knot in my stomach. I walked to my car slowly. My phone buzzed. Nicole. I stared at it. Then another message came in. Nicole, Mom, where are you? Nicole, we need to talk. Nicole, I'm already in your driveway. My heart slammed against my ribs. She hadn't asked. She hadn't waited. She'd just shown up. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, the lawyer's words echoing in my head. Pressure, urgency, guilt. I started the engine. When I pulled into my driveway, Nicole was standing on my porch, and she looked nothing like the confident woman who'd uninvited me from Thanksgiving. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail. No makeup, red swollen eyes. The sight of her nearly broke me. I opened the door. Mom, she said, her voice cracking. We need to talk. I stepped aside and let her in. The same kitchen, the same table. But this time, it wasn't about pie or sweaters or traditions. It was about money. And it was about consequences. And I had no idea how badly this conversation was about to hurt. Nicole stood in my kitchen like she didn't recognize it. Like it wasn't the place where she'd once sat at this same table doing homework, crying over her first heartbreak, planning her wedding. She looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but emotionally. Like all the confidence she wore so carefully had cracked on the drive over. Can I sit? She asked quietly. I nodded. We sat across from each other, the table between us like a border. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she broke. I lost the Hastings account, she said, staring at her hands. Richard Hastings canceled everything. He said if we treated family like that, he didn't want to work with us. There it was. Not regret. Not remorse. Consequences. And Liam is furious, she continued quickly. He says this could ruin his career. The mortgage is due next week. We don't have the money. I folded my hands in my lap. So you came here? Yes. She looked up at me, eyes pleading. Mom, I need help. I waited. She swallowed. The 30,000. We really need it now. If we don't make this payment, we could lose the house. Emma and Jake could lose their home. The words were careful, strategic. Rebecca Chen's voice echoed in my mind, using grandchildren as leverage. Nicole, I said softly, how much debt are you in? She hesitated. Then barely above a whisper, about 400,000. I felt the air leave my lungs. $400,000? I repeated. Liam said the investments would pay off, that we had to look successful to attract successful clients, that this was just temporary, like humiliation, like disrespect, like stealing $5,000 from your mother without asking. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, turned the screen toward her. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Her face drained of color. Mom, I can explain. You took money from me without asking, I said. My voice didn't shake even though my hands did. That's theft, Nicole. I was going to pay it back, she cried. Liam needed it for the caterer deposit and you thought my money was yours to take. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. I panicked, she said. I didn't know what else to do. I stood up and walked to the counter, then back to the table. I closed the joint account, I said. She looked up sharply. What? And I revised my will. Her mouth fell open. The house, I continued evenly, will go to charity. My savings are going into a trust for Emma and Jake. They'll have access when they're older. And me? She whispered. You won't. The silence that followed was deafening. You're cutting me out, she said finally. No, I replied. I'm protecting myself. Tears streamed down her face. This is about money. I shook my head. No, this is about respect. I leaned forward. You uninvited me from Thanksgiving because I embarrassed you. You told me my food, my traditions, my life weren't good enough. Then, when your sophisticated dinner failed, you called me to fix it. That's not fair. It's exactly fair. I took a breath. When was the last time you asked how I was doing? If I was lonely? If I was okay financially? She couldn't answer. When was the last time you came over just to visit? Still silence. You didn't want me, Nicole. You wanted my money. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. You'll regret this, she said coldly, when we lose everything. Maybe, I said quietly. But at least I won't regret it without my dignity. She stared at me for a long moment, like she wanted to say something else. Then she turned and walked out. The door closed behind her with a final hollow sound. I stood there shaking. Then my knees gave out and I sat down hard at the table and cried. An hour later, David let himself in through the back door, the way I'd told him he could. He didn't ask questions. He just pulled me into his arms and held me while I cried into his shoulder. I cut her out, I said. My only daughter. You protected yourself, he corrected gently. There's a difference. What if I made a mistake? I whispered. What if she really needs help? Nancy, he said softly, you can't set yourself on fire to keep someone else warm, even your child. My phone buzzed. I pulled back and looked at the screen. Unknown number. Mrs. Fletcher, this is Patricia Hastings. We need to talk. Can we meet tomorrow morning? Nicole's mother-in-law. The woman who had always looked down on my daughter. My stomach tightened. I looked up at David. I think, I said slowly, this story isn't over. Not even close. Because the next truth I was about to learn would change how I saw everything. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Nicole's face, angry, desperate, broken, and heard my own voice saying words mothers aren't supposed to say. You won't get anything. By morning, my eyes burned and my head ached, but my resolve hadn't softened. At 10 sharp, I walked into Powell's Books Cafe. It was busy for a weekday morning. Students with laptops, tourists wandering the aisles, the smell of coffee and paper in the air. Normal life continuing, indifferent to the fact that my family felt like it was cracking apart. Patricia Hastings was already there. She stood as soon as she saw me. Perfectly styled silver hair, tailored coat, expensive but understated jewelry. The same woman who had once pulled me aside at Nicole's wedding reception and said, Nicole is marrying up. She'll need to adapt. Nancy, she said, extending her hand. Thank you for coming. I shook it and sat across from her. I assume this is about Nicole and Liam, I said. Yes, she replied, but not in the way you think. That surprised me. She took a slow breath, then opened her handbag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I owe you an apology, she said, and you deserve the truth. She slid the envelope across the table. I didn't open it yet. What truth? I asked. Patricia folded her hands together, and for the first time, I noticed they were trembling. My son has a gambling addiction. The cafe noise seemed to fade. I'm sorry, I said. Liam has been gambling for years, she continued quietly. Casinos, online betting, sports, high stakes, higher losses. My fingers finally opened the envelope. Inside were bank statements, credit card bills, casino receipts, online betting account summaries, losses in the hundreds of thousands. I felt sick. The investment opportunity he told you about, Patricia said tightly, doesn't exist. He needed money to cover gambling debts. My chest tightened. Does Nicole know? I asked. She knows he gambles, Patricia said. She does not know how bad it is, or how much debt he's in. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice barely steady. Because Nicole is in danger, she said simply. Not physical, Liam isn't violent, but financial. He's dragging her down with him. I closed the envelope slowly. And you want me to give them money? I asked. Patricia looked horrified. God, no. I want you to protect yourself. She leaned forward. I've paid off Liam's debts twice already. Sent him to therapy. Covered for him with business partners. He just got better at lying. I thought of the $30,000 text. The urgency. The promises. And now? I asked. Now I'm done enabling him, she said. And I want to help Nicole get out. Get out? I repeated. Yes, divorce, custody, a clean break. Her voice cracked slightly. I've already spoken to my lawyer. I'm prepared to help her if she's willing. I stared at this woman I'd once resented, who had made my daughter feel small. Why now? I asked. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. Because 30 years ago, I was married to a man like Liam, she said. A gambler, charming, destructive. And when I finally left him, my own mother told me I'd made my bed and had to lie in it. She swallowed. I don't want Nicole to suffer the way I did. Silence stretched between us. I know I pushed her, Patricia continued. Pushed her to fit into a world that wasn't hers. I made her ashamed of where she came from. Of you. She looked at me directly. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. I didn't know what to say. I'm divorcing my second husband, she added quietly. The one with the money and the status. I'm 72 years old, Nancy, and I'm finally learning that wealth without happiness is just gilded misery. She reached across the table and touched my hand. When Nicole is ready, she'll need her mother. Not your money, you. I left Powell's books with the envelope tucked under my arm and my heart in pieces. David was waiting at my house when I got home. How did it go? He asked. I handed him the envelope. As he read, his face darkened. Gambling addiction, he said quietly. That explains everything. It doesn't excuse what she did to me, I said. No, he agreed. But it gives context. I sank onto the couch. I don't know what to do, I admitted. I'm angry. I'm hurt. And I'm terrified for my grandchildren. David put his arm around my shoulders. You don't have to decide anything today, he said. Boundaries first. Help later if and when it's safe, I nodded. 3 days later, my phone rang. The caller ID said, Emma. My heart stopped. Grandma, she whispered. Mom and Dad are fighting really bad. Dad threw a glass. We locked the door like Mom taught us. My blood ran cold. Are you safe? I asked. Yes, she said, her voice shaking. But I'm scared. I held the phone tightly. Stay there, I said. I'm going to help. And in that moment, I knew whatever choices I'd made before, the next ones would be about protecting those children, no matter the cost. Emma, I said, forcing my voice to stay calm even as my heart pounded. Listen to me very carefully. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers ached. Are you and Jake together? Yes, she whispered. He's here. We locked the door. Good, I said. You did exactly the right thing. Stay in the room. Don't open the door for anyone. I'm going to call your mom right now. Okay, Grandma, she said. Please hurry. I will, I promised. I love you. I love you too. The line went dead. For a second, I just stood there, staring at the phone, my mind racing through every terrible possibility. Then I called Nicole. It rang once, twice, 3 times. She answered on the 4th ring. What? Her voice was rough, like she'd been crying or screaming. Emma just called me, I said, not bothering to soften my words. She said you and Liam are fighting, that he threw glass. There was a pause. Then, defensive and too fast, it's fine. We're fine. Nicole, I said sharply, are you safe? Another pause. Yes, she said. Then quieter. I have to go. Nicole, she hung up. My hands were shaking. I felt suddenly useless, standing miles away while my grandchildren were locked in a bedroom, scared. I did the only thing left. I called Patricia. She answered on the 1st ring. Nancy? Patricia, it's happening, I said. Emma called me. Liam threw glass. I don't know if Nicole's safe. I'm on my way, she said immediately. What's the address? I gave it to her. I'll call you when I get there, she said. Thank you for telling me. The next hour was agony. I paced my living room, sat down, stood up again. Every sound outside made me jump. David arrived quietly through the back door, concern written all over his face. What's wrong? He asked. I told him everything in a rush. She did the right thing, he said firmly when I finished. You did too. An hour later, my phone rang. Patricia. I'm here, she said. Nicole and the children are coming with me. I exhaled so hard my knees nearly buckled. Is she hurt? No, Patricia said. Shaken, terrified, but physically okay. A pause. Liam left. We don't know where he went. What happens now? I asked. Now, Patricia said. She stays with me. We get her and the kids safe. We start the legal process. Another pause. She wants to talk to you. My chest tightened. Then Nicole's voice came on the line. Mom, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. You were right. About everything. I closed my eyes. I don't know how this happened, she cried. I don't know how I let it get this bad. It's okay, I said softly, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. You're safe. The kids are safe. That's what matters right now. I don't deserve your help, she whispered. No, I agreed gently. You probably don't. She let out a broken sob. But you're my daughter, I continued, and you're in trouble. So I'm going to help you anyway. Why? She asked through tears. Because that's what mothers do, I said. Even when their hearts are broken. But things have to change, Nicole, I added firmly. We will talk about boundaries, about respect, about what I need too. Anything, she said quickly. I'll do anything. We'll talk later, I said. For now, stay with Patricia. Keep Emma and Jake close. I love you. I love you too, Mom. When the call ended, I stood there in the quiet of my house shaking. David stepped forward and wrapped his arms around me. You did good, he said quietly. I don't feel good, I admitted. You protected children, he replied. That's never the wrong choice. Later that night, alone, I stood in my kitchen looking at the half-finished sweaters on the table. Emma's green one, Jake's blue one just begun. I picked up the needles and started knitting again. Not because everything was okay, but because love doesn't disappear when it's tested. It just changes shape. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Lawyers, divorce, hard conversations. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would never again confuse love with surrender. And the next chapter of our lives was about to begin under my roof. Nicole moved in on a gray Sunday morning in early December. The sky hung low and heavy like it was holding its breath. Patricia's Mercedes pulled into my driveway just after 9. I stood at the window, hands wrapped around a mug of coffee gone cold, my heart pounding harder with every second. Then the car doors opened. Emma burst out first, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. "Grandma!" she yelled, sprinting up the walkway. I barely had time to brace myself before she crashed into me, arms tight around my waist. "We're going to live with you," she said breathlessly. "Mom said we can stay as long as we need." Jake followed more slowly, dragging his dinosaur backpack behind him. He pressed his face into my side without a word, his small body trembling just slightly. "I missed your house," he murmured. "I missed you." I kissed the top of his head, breathing in that familiar shampoo and syrup smell that meant home. "I missed you too, buddy," I said. "So much." Nicole stepped out last. She moved like every step required effort. No makeup, dark circles under her eyes, an old college sweatshirt I hadn't seen in years. She looked smaller, not weak, but stripped of everything she'd been hiding behind. Patricia helped carry the suitcases up the path. "I packed what they'll need for now," she said quietly. "The rest is in storage. The restraining order was granted yesterday. Liam isn't allowed within 500 feet. He didn't actually hurt us," Nicole said quickly, that defensive reflex rising. "He just scared us." "Fear is harm, Nicole," Patricia said gently but firmly. "Emotional wounds count." Nicole looked away. I opened the door wider. "Come inside. It's cold and I have hot chocolate on the stove." The house filled instantly. Coats over chairs, shoes by the door, children's voices echoing up the stairs. Emma and Jake ran ahead to the guest room, already arguing over who got which side of the bed. Nicole stood in the living room, arms wrapped around herself, eyes darting like she didn't quite believe she was allowed to be there. "Mom," she started. "Not yet," I said softly. "First we settle in. Eat something, breathe, we'll talk later." Relief washed over her face. "Thank you," she whispered. That first week was strange. We moved around each other carefully, like dancers learning new steps. Nicole stayed mostly in her room, the sewing room I'd cleared out the night before, moving my fabric downstairs so she'd have privacy. At night, I heard her crying through the thin walls, deep broken sobs she tried to muffle with pillows. I stood outside her door more than once, my hand raised to knock. But I didn't. She needed space to feel what she'd avoided for years. And honestly, I needed space too. The hurt was still there. The Thanksgiving call, the stolen money, years of being made to feel small. Emma and Jake adjusted faster than I expected. Children are resilient that way. Emma helped me cook every evening, standing on a step stool, measuring ingredients with intense focus. "Why do we add salt to sweet things?" she asked one night. "Because salt brings out other flavors," I said, then paused, like how hard things can make good things feel stronger. She nodded thoughtfully. "That makes sense." Jake followed David everywhere whenever he came over, which was often. David had the patience of a man who taught for 40 years. One evening, Jake asked him, "Why do people fight if they love each other?" David knelt down to his level. "Sometimes people fight because they're scared," he said. "But love should never make you feel unsafe." Jake absorbed that quietly, filing it away. 6 days after moving in, Nicole emerged from her room looking different. Clean clothes, washed hair, eyes still tired, but present. "Mom," she said hesitantly, "can we talk now?" David caught my eye from the living room where he was building a block castle with Jake. "I'll keep the kids busy," he said gently. Nicole and I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd helped her with math homework, the same one where she'd planned her wedding. Now it felt like neutral ground. "I need to tell you everything," she said. "About Liam, about the gambling, about the money." I nodded. "I'm listening." "I knew about the gambling 3 years ago," she admitted, staring at her hands. "Not how bad it was, but enough to know it was a problem." My chest tightened. He promised he'd stop. Go to therapy. And for a while I believed him. But he didn't stop. He just got better at hiding it. She laughed bitterly. And I got better at pretending. The house in West Hills, we couldn't afford it, but Liam said we had to look successful. That image mattered. So you drowned quietly, I said. Yes, tears spilled over. And I was ashamed. Ashamed that I'd chosen wrong. Ashamed that my perfect life was a lie. She looked up at me. And ashamed of you. The words hurt, even though I'd already known them. Patricia made comments, she continued. Little ones. About my background. About you. And I started believing her. She covered her face. I became what hurt me. We sat in silence. Then I spoke. You hurt me deeply, Nicole. Not once, but over years. I know, she whispered. And I don't expect forgiveness. She took a shaky breath. But can we try? I looked at my daughter, broken, honest, finally real. I'm willing to try, I said, but things will be different. She nodded immediately. Anything. Boundaries, I said. Respect, therapy, and accountability. I've already started therapy, she said quickly. Patricia helped me find someone. Good. And this stay is temporary, I added. 6 months. A year at most. You'll contribute what you can. Yes, she said. Of course. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. We're not going back to how things were, I said softly. But maybe we can build something better. She cried then, and for the first time in a long time, I let her. Because healing doesn't start with comfort. It starts with truth. The next few weeks settled into a rhythm none of us had planned, but all of us needed. Mornings started early. Nicole walked to her new job at Dr. Morrison's dental office 3 blocks away. It wasn't glamorous. Reception work. Minimum wage. But it was honest and, more importantly, it was hers. The first morning she left, she paused at the door like she wasn't sure she was allowed to go. I'll be back by 5, she said quietly. Take your time, I replied. Dinner will wait. She nodded, relief flickering across her face, and left. Emma and Jake adjusted faster than I thought possible. Jake stopped waking up screaming in the middle of the night. His teacher called to say he was raising his hand in class again. Emma stopped chewing her nails until they bled and joined the school choir, her voice floating through the house in the evenings like something healing. Grandma, she told me one night while I tucked her in, this house feels like hugs. I kissed her forehead and swallowed hard. That's because it's built on love. Nicole came home exhausted most nights, sometimes quiet, sometimes angry, sometimes crying. Twice a week, she went to therapy. She says I'm a people pleaser. Nicole told me one evening as we chopped vegetables side by side that I learned to put everyone else first and forgot how to exist as my own person. I paused my chopping. Did you feel like you had to take care of me after your dad died? I asked gently. She nodded. I never wanted to be another thing that failed in your life. My heart broke all over again. Oh, Nicole. I stayed with Liam because leaving felt like failure, she continued. Turns out staying was worse. One evening, she knocked on my bedroom door holding an envelope. I need to do something, she said. For me. Inside was a check, $5,000. I can't take this, I said immediately. You have to, she replied firmly. It's repayment for what I took. I know you don't need it, she continued, tears forming. But I do. I need to take responsibility. I hesitated, then nodded. Thank you, I said quietly. That night, I added another line to my list. Accountability matters. Around that same time, my phone rang. Nancy Fletcher, a man asked. Yes. This is Richard Hastings. I nearly dropped the phone. I wanted to apologize, he said awkwardly, for my role in what happened at Thanksgiving. He told me about Emily, his assistant, one of my former students. She said you used to bring food for kids who couldn't afford lunch, he said. That you stayed late to help anyone who needed it. She changed her own life, I replied. That's what she said too, he chuckled. But she also told me about the scholarship you started. It's small, I said quickly. Just something local. I'd like to change that, he said. I want to fund it, substantially. I sat down hard in my chair. You gonna want to donate? Yes, and I'm not the only one. 5 of your former students reached out to me this week alone. After I hung up, I stared at the wall, stunned. David found me like that. Good news? He asked. Life-changing news, I whispered. Meanwhile, Nicole had started baking again. Tentatively at first, then obsessively. She pulled out my old recipe box one evening. Can I use these? She asked softly. They're yours, I said. They always were. By January, she had a name, Nicole's Legacy Bakery. Emma designed the logo. Patricia offered to invest, but not gift. A loan, she insisted, with terms. Independence matters. Nicole was terrified. What if I fail? She asked me. Then you'll fail, I said simply, and learn, and try again. The first farmer's market was cold and gray. Nicole's hands shook as she arranged pies. What if no one comes? Then we eat pie all week, I smiled. People came, they stayed. They cried tasting apple pie. One woman said, This tastes like my grandmother. By noon, half the inventory was gone. By 4, everything was sold. Nicole stared at the empty table in disbelief. They loved it, she whispered. Yes, I said, because it was made with love. That night, we celebrated with Chinese takeout. Emma and Jake danced in the living room. Nicole sat beside me quietly. Mom, she said, I know I hurt you, deeply. Yes, I said. But you didn't abandon me, she continued. You just stopped letting me hurt you. I nodded. That's what love with boundaries looks like. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I want to be like you, she said softly. You already are, I replied. You just forgot for a while. Outside, the rain washed the streets clean. Inside, something broken had finally begun to mend. Not because I saved her, but because I stopped sacrificing myself to do it. And that changed everything. 3 weeks before Christmas, something happened that none of us expected. My phone rang while I was in the kitchen rolling out cookie dough with Emma. Grandma, she said seriously, pressing flour into a star-shaped cutter, do you think people can really change? I looked at her small hands, so careful, so hopeful. I think, I said slowly, people can change when the pain of staying, the same becomes bigger than the fear of changing. She nodded, like she was filing that answer away for later. That night, after the kids were asleep, Nicole knocked on my bedroom door. Can I come in? She asked quietly. She sat on the edge of my bed, holding something wrapped in tissue paper. I made you something, she said. For Christmas. Well, for us. I unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a handmade journal. The cover read, in her careful handwriting, Our story is the next chapter. My breath caught. She opened it for me. The first page was a photo from that Thanksgiving, not the one I wasn't invited to. The one at my house, me standing at the table laughing, surrounded by people who had chosen to be there. The next pages held newer photos, Nicole and me cooking together, Emma singing in the choir, Jake building block towers with David, the Christmas tree half decorated, lights tangled, all of us laughing, then blank pages. For what comes next, she said. For the memories we haven't made yet. Tears slipped down my face. This is beautiful, I whispered. There's more, she said. She handed me another envelope. Inside was a check, $5,000. Again. I already paid you back, I said gently. This one isn't repayment, she replied. This one is for the scholarship fund. My first contribution. My heart clenched. It's not much, she added quickly, but it's mine, earned, and I wanted it to go toward something good, something you started. I reached for her hand. This matters more than you know, I said. She swallowed hard. Mom, she said, I used to think you were small. The word hung between us. Not unimportant, she rushed to clarify. Just quiet, Simple. I thought sophistication meant money and status and appearances. She shook her head. I was wrong. She looked up at me, eyes clear and steady in a way I hadn't seen in years. You were building something real the whole time. I was chasing something hollow. I squeezed her hand. That realization, I said, is the beginning of wisdom. The next morning, David came over with 2 cups of coffee from the cafe down the street. Big plans today? He asked. I'm meeting with the scholarship committee, I replied. His eyebrows rose. Already? Apparently I'm famous, I smiled faintly. He laughed, then grew thoughtful. You know, he said, what you did with Nicole, that wasn't easy. No, I agreed. But you didn't reject her, he continued. You rejected the behavior. I nodded. There's a difference, he said. And kids notice that. That afternoon, the phone rang again. Mrs. Fletcher, a woman said warmly, this is Margaret Hastings, Richard's wife. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, I said cautiously. I wanted to thank you, she continued, for the scholarship and for what you showed me. She explained that she'd grown up poor, trailer parks, parents working 3 jobs. I spent years hiding where I came from, she admitted softly, trying to belong to a world that never quite fit. I closed my eyes. Sound familiar? She asked gently. Yes, I said. I had a teacher once, she continued. A woman who believed in me when no one else did. She passed away before I could thank her. She paused. I'd like to donate to your scholarship fund. $25,000 to start, and matching funds for whatever the community raises. I sat down slowly. That's incredibly generous. It's overdue, she replied. Teachers like you change lives quietly. I want to help amplify that. After the call ended, I sat in my quiet kitchen, overwhelmed. Nicole came in and took one look at my face. What happened? Ripples, I said softly. From one dinner. That evening, we decorated the Christmas tree together. David read "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" to Emma and Jake, using silly voices that made them giggle uncontrollably. Nicole sat beside me on the couch, our shoulders touching easily. Mom, she said quietly, if you could go back, would you change Thanksgiving? I thought about it, about the hurt, the rejection, the night I cried myself to sleep, and about everything that followed. No, I said finally, because that was the moment I chose myself. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and because of that, she whispered, we found our way back to each other. Outside, snow began to fall. Inside, the house glowed warm and bright, and for the first time in a long time, the future didn't scare me, because it wasn't about perfection anymore. It was about honesty, boundaries, and love that didn't erase the self. New Year's Day arrived quietly. No drama, no emergencies, just soft winter light spilling through my kitchen window, and the sound of Emma humming upstairs. Nicole was at Patricia's, finalizing paperwork for her bakery loan. David was at a faculty reunion. For the first time in weeks, it was just me and the kids. Emma curled up beside me on the couch, her feet tucked under my leg. Grandma, she asked thoughtfully, when Mommy gets her own place again, can we still come visit you? Of course, I said without hesitation. Whenever you want. She smiled, relieved. Good, because this house feels safe. Jake looked up from his blocks and nodded seriously. And Mr. David doesn't yell. And he makes you smile. I laughed softly. He does make me smile. Is he going to be our grandpa? Jake asked. I paused. Well, I said gently, how would you feel about that? Happy, Emma answered immediately. Very happy. Later that evening, Nicole knocked on my bedroom door. She held something wrapped carefully in brown paper. I've been thinking a lot, she said. About independence. About not relying on you the way I used to. My heart clenched, but I nodded. She handed me the package. Inside was a check, $5,000. I know, she said quickly. I already paid you back. This one is different. For what? I asked. It's the last payment, she said. Patricia loaned it to me formally. 10-year plan, $50 a month. I needed to finish this part first. To make it right, I looked at my daughter, not the polished woman she'd tried to be, not the broken one who'd come home shaking, but someone real, someone accountable. I accept, I said quietly. She hugged me then, tight, honest, grateful. I wouldn't be here without you, she whispered. You would, I corrected. I just reminded you who you were. February came faster than expected. Nicole's first farmer's market day arrived cold and gray. We woke at 4 in the morning and baked side by side apple pies, pumpkin pies, pecan pies, bread cooling on racks, cookies wrapped carefully. What if no one comes? She asked, eyes wide with fear. Then we'll eat pie all week, I smiled. People came. They stayed. They cried tasting the apple pie. This tastes like my grandmother, one woman said, buying 3 more. By noon, half the inventory was gone. By 4, the table was empty. Nicole stared at it in disbelief. They loved it, she whispered. Of course they did, I said. You made it with love. That night, we celebrated with Chinese takeout and sparkling cider. Emma danced. Jake clapped. Nicole laughed. Really laughed. For the first time in years. Weeks later, I stood in the kitchen holding my phone, tears streaming down my face. Richard Hastings had donated to the scholarship fund. Margaret matched it. Former students kept reaching out. Lives I'd touched without ever knowing the full impact. David wrapped his arms around me. You see? He whispered. You were never small. No, I said. I was just quiet. Spring arrived. Nicole saved enough to move into a small apartment by summer. Safe, modest, hers. The kids still came every weekend. David stayed for dinner most nights. One evening, as we washed dishes together, he looked at me and said, You didn't just save your daughter. I raised an eyebrow. You taught her how to live without losing herself. I thought about that, about the Thanksgiving I was uninvited from, the table I built instead, the boundary that changed everything. Loving someone doesn't mean accepting poor treatment. Helping doesn't mean sacrificing yourself. And being a mother doesn't mean disappearing. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table and opened the journal Nicole had given me. Our story, the next chapter. I wrote one final entry. I once thought love meant endurance. Now I know it means dignity. I chose myself, and in doing so, I gave my family something better than money. I gave them an example. I closed the journal. On the table beside it sat a paper crane, my first one. Uneven, imperfect, mine. I smiled, because I wasn't waiting anymore. I was living, and this time on my own terms.